Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast where we look to reassure you that football is fixable. Alright. Hello, Sess, alright?
Alright.
Oh, what? No, I said Sess, not
Jason Statham.
Not Jason Statham.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you? You good?
Yeah, not bad at all. Bit down considering it's the internationals. Bit of a downer, isn't it? The Nations League.
Yeah. Also, for Everton to end the first part of the Premier League round, if you like, the first round of 3 matches.
Hey, if there's ever a team that could lose a 2-0 lead after the 87th minute,
Snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah. Oh god, that was horrendous, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah, because we were watching bits of it at the time, weren't we? Like watching the.
Well, yeah, we. I think from the 85th minute or something, we were looking at the scores as they were coming up on Sports, Sky Sports, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah. Oh wow.
Goal.
Oh no. Oh wait. Sorry, mate. I didn't know what to say to console you. You know,
no.
You just had to go and cry, didn't you?
I kind of just gave up, didn't I? I was just like, yeah,
it's not even surprising now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got to say, it looks like maybe Dyche could be the first one to be under major pressure.
Yeah. Well, we actually said that there's 2 things we kind of had to reevaluate. One was Dyche might look like he's taken over the mantle of being the baldy most likely to get sacked ahead of Ten Hag, and Everton, how strong will they be in the league? Because I think this is the strongest they're going to be. We're not going to strengthen in January.
That's the worry, isn't it? Yeah, that's the real worry. Because Ten Hag obviously not covering himself in glory necessarily after.
No, not really.
It was Liverpool, but I mean that's a big thing because United, Liverpool, the massive rivalry. There's been a lot of rumours in the papers saying that he'll have until the festive period to what they expect at Ineos. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and that kind of the gang at United now. They want to see a style of play on the pitch. They want to start seeing progress in more sort of visible forms.
It's fair, isn't it, for them to go. It's been 2 years. Can we see something?
Can you actually do something now?
I think that's the problem. If you can, however long the period of time is that you see a change, a progression, even if it's not much, as long as there is an idea of a progression, then you can say 2 years, maybe fair enough. We've seen a regression, haven't we? We've seen even less than what we did. His first year was actually not that bad at all. I think it was a trophy and 3rd place.
Though, I mean, in terms of results, he seems to end up like the trophy last year, but that kind of hides. I think it was bad in terms of some of the style of play. And
his first year, I think, he didn't really have a style or anything, but at the very least, they were doing things enough as a counter-attacking team to be able to get the goals.
They managed to grab a goal or grab a win and that sort of thing.
And then they kind of lost that in the second season, and now they seem to have regressed even more. So it's just, if you see a regression after 2.5 years or whatever,
that's a worry, isn't it?
That's
the
worry.
Thing, especially when you see Arne Slot. I know he's come into Liverpool. It's been a few games, but already you can see styles of play. They were a better team. They got a better squad of players. Following the Klopp era, where there are quite a few people, including myself, by the way, thinking that filling the shoes of this great manager before, it's often not gone well. So at United,
it's a very weird tradition to leave your shoes where you played, managed before.
But, why are they so big?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think he started well. It's a long season. It'd be interesting to see how it goes for him. But certainly, I like the football they're playing. To be fair,
well, I think the thing about him is that we haven't seen the drop off like we did with after Fergie and after Wenger.
Yeah.
There's normally, even with the same players, with Fergie, for example, they just won the league. That was a heck of a drop-off. At least with Wenger, it had kind of been dropping before he left
to
anyway.
Decline a little bit.
Yeah. So it's good to see with Liverpool that there hasn't been a drop-off at all. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're better than last season because it's too early to say.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But there hasn't been that huge drop-off that we expected.
Salah's looked sharp, hasn't he? He's looked really good.
Yeah.
I think I need to get him in my FPL. He's looking good.
Well, I think it's fair to say that you need either Salah or Haaland finally in your team now.
I was gambling, but we'll get more to FPL later. Let's brush that aside a minute. Going back to Ten Hag, though, so he's came out and said he's not Harry Potter.
That's true.
I mean, that is true.
If anything, he's Voldemort, I would say.
He does look a bit like Voldemort, actually.
Yeah.
Or I've always thought a Bond villain. He sort of looks a bit like he should have a white, fluffy cat or something.
Yeah, I could see that. He looks too nice, I think.
Does he?
I think he's got his expressions and stuff. He doesn't seem threatening enough.
Oh, I always he's quite frowny, but that's just I thought. But all right, then.
Okay.
But yeah,
is that the point that you were making with him?
yeah. No, I was going to say. So he was trying to say he doesn't work magic, but like you're saying, it's been 2 years, and you expect something. I want to see patterns of play, and that's why we're thinking about the kind of our first tactics episode, isn't it? Where we look at United and they can't pass out from the back. They're apparently going to be a transition team, but they're not doing that. It's all a bit, if they're transitioning, it's very, very slow. So how are you countering when it's so slow? So there's a lot to fix still.
Yeah, and it almost feels as though he doesn't know how to play out the back, even though he's supposed to be a manager that can. Yeah. Carragher pointed out recently that there's a reason for passing out the back. Keep possession, draw the other team in so that you create more space for your team in midfield. Yeah. And yet they're not doing that. They're thinking, right, we've got to pass out from the back. So they just start passing.
And there's no aim to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. And the pace that they're doing it as well, they're attracting players, the space that they're moving into, it's a bit of a mess, I think. But,
yeah.
But in other news, San Marino won a game. I think that's their first competitive game they've won or something like that. They beat Liechtenstein.
I remember a year or two ago, they were celebrating like they won the World Cup because they'd scored a goal.
Yes, that was it.
They lost the game, but they scored a goal.
That's brilliant. And now they've won. They beat Liechtenstein. But don't worry for Liechtenstein. They've organised a friendly with Man United to raise their spirit.
Hey.
In other news, it has been a milestone. It has been a milestone this week.
Okay.
Because today marks the 2 billionth second since Spurs won a title.
Wow.
For context, 2 billion seconds from today will be the 19th of January, 2088. How about that?
That definitely is a stat. I can tell you that
there
right
go.
now.
We like our stats, don't we? As long as they're used wisely, we say.
Yeah. Wow, you just wanted to get that in there, didn't you?
I'm on form today.
Should we have a soonest saying?
Oh, do we have a silly soonest saying?
We do. We have a little jingle as well.
Really?
Silly soonest sayings.
So Souness was talking on TalkSport with Simon Jordan and Jim White, and he came up with another one of his fantastic lines. You know, he only says smart things.
Yeah.
I can't really remember what they were talking about, but there's a line here which will be famous now. He'll be known forevermore with this line. He said, there's no rule book in a game of football.
What?
Yeah. They were, I can't really remember what they were talking about, but he brought up the rule book. Oh, it was about the Declan Rice red card.
Oh, don't remind me.
Yeah, so he decided to say that by the letter of the law, it was a red card, like a second yellow.
Right.
And he said, because there's a rule book, but football is fluid. And then they started just kind of trying to nail down the idea of, hang on, but you're saying it needs to be consistent, but it's fluid, so it's not consistent. And so he said, there's no rule book in a game of football.
There's no rule book in a game of football?
There's no rule book in a game of football, apparently. Yeah. That's how he
sure he says this stuff? I'm like, he can't actually say this stuff.
Hey, if he wants to deny it, then he can sue me and I can get loads of money.
Oh, yeah.
Because he did say it. And it's on TalkSport.
Oh, right. We're promoting them now.
Oh, that's true. It's on YouTube.
Ah.
We're promoting YouTube as well. Oh, that's fine. We can promote YouTube.
Yeah, we're on YouTube.
Yeah.
You could go and check our YouTube channel out. Get one in there.
Segue.
How about that? That was brilliant. In other news, did you know, so former Everton legend, Ronald Koeman.
Oh, yes, Everton legend.
He's not happy.
Oh, okay. Well, in other news.
No, well, you might ask why he's not happy. So.
I might.
Apparently, it's just so annoying. So, Steven Bergwijn, or Bergwijn, is that how you say it?
Sure.
Didn't he play for Liverpool or something?
Yeah, why not?
Steven Bergwijn, he has decided to go to Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wait, wasn't he Tottenham?
Oh, yeah, it was Spurs, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he decided to go to Saudi?
Yeah, and he's actually, you know how old he is?
I thought he was quite young, like maybe 26, 27.
Spot on. You know, you should be on a podcast.
Yeah.
He's 26 years old. But yeah, so Koeman's come out and said, because he was playing for the Netherlands internationally, but now Koeman as manager is not going to let him in there. Because if you're going to Saudi at age 26,
Yeah.
And I quote, Koeman said that it's clear that this has nothing to do with sporting ambition. His book with the Dutch national team is closed.
Ooh.
So I mean, why would you go to Saudi at the age of 26 when you think you still got a lot of your career ahead of you, your peak most likely as well, and the European, there's so many leagues in Europe that you can still go, and you can go to Saudi maybe in your last few years or something.
I was talking about this with a guy at work recently, and I don't begrudge anyone at any age going to the Saudi League or China as well when they were paying loads of money, because although you love the game of football and you want to be able to play at the top level and all that stuff, there's some people like Bergwijn who won't necessarily reach the top level. He wasn't playing week in, week out for Tottenham. You know, that's maybe a level too far for him, possibly.
Right.
So you could go a level lower than that. You could play for a West Ham or Palace or, a middling team in another league in Europe. Or you can go to Saudi and earn money that you never would have dreamed of. And
get
I
you
know
through the rest of your life.
Yeah, and fair enough, you could say that, but you can earn good money in other places. We're not talking about the 400 grand a week that De Bruyne is earning. Not everyone earns that kind of money, and he could be earning 400 grand plus a week there. If he's just there for a year, he'd make more than he could in 10 years anywhere else.
Interesting point.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily begrudge that. We would think similar, in our line of work, in our industry. If we were asked by another company, a similar company, can you do the same job for us, but it'll be easier and you'll get paid 10 times more?
I don't know.
Why not?
We literally don't get paid for this. No, we are literally a non-profit organisation on our
That's
podcast,
true.
mate.
Yeah,
So
not by choice. Then.
so
yeah.
I don't know. I expect more of us. Come on.
So if another podcast came along and said, can you do the same thing, but we'll actually pay you? We'd obviously say no, because we go, this is priceless. Quite literally.
It is. Yeah. This is just quality. It's quality you're listening to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And finally, did you know that Bolton Wanderers striker Victor Adebayo, if I said
him,
that right,
yeah.
He missed the EFL Trophy victory at Barrow on Tuesday, having injured himself after a hefty sneeze.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the manager Ian Evert said he had a pretty hefty sneeze. Now Victor is a powerful boy, and even his sneezes are powerful.
Wow.
So he literally missed a game because of a sneeze.
There was a cricketer, this bowler called Alan Mullally, I think he was called, England bowler, and he broke his rib from a sneeze and he had to miss a bunch of games.
What?
Yeah, so it can happen.
How? You don't want to be in a room when a sneeze like that goes off then, do you?
Well, I mean, those injuries, they're internal. It's not like the expelling injured him. It's not like it bounced against the wall and hit him on his ribs.
Hits the clock off the wall and stuff.
Yeah, it's not like that. It's I think they just like contract too much or something. I don't know. But that's a hefty sneeze.
Yeah. That'd be a shame, wouldn't it? You're missing it. You're looking for the final as well to miss a game like that.
That's that basically tells you, doesn't it? Don't hold in your expalements. I don't know what the word is. Anything that wants to come out, let it out.
And on that note, let's get into the episode. So today we've got another special guest with us, and it's a very special guest, Sess.
Yes. I think one of us know him quite well.
Yes. I think we both know him quite well, actually, but one of us probably knows him a bit better. So
that's true.
It's the creator of mathematics himself. It's Sess's dad. It's Matt. Hello, Matt.
Hello, James.
How are you?
And
You
hello,
well?
Sess. Yeah, very well, very well.
Got one of the best theme tunes there as well, Sess, I've got to say.
Yeah, that was a nice one. Do you remember when we first started talking about mathematics?
Yeah, well, it was years ago, wasn't it?
It was.
Back when we were playing in a football team together. And
We're probably still teenagers. Actually, we were teenagers. We would have been under 18.
Yeah, I think it was our first proper team, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like first league.
Yeah, so that was for the Bath Chronicle team, 6-a-side league. We did quite well. I think we finished second in that season.
That's it.
Yeah, we lost. We only lost 2 games, but we lost quite badly in those games. And I remember my dad turning to us and saying, if we didn't let in those 10 goals, then our goal difference would be, what was it? Instead of minus 14, it'll be minus 4.
That's wow. I mean, it is mathematics. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But you know Donald Rumsfeld? He was the Secretary of Defence in George W. Bush's government.
Oh, right.
And he came up with something which everybody said was completely idiotic, but actually it made quite good sense. He was talking about military affairs, and he said you have things that you know, and you have things that you don't know, and you have things that you don't know you don't know. And everybody talked about what nonsense it was, but actually it does make sense.
Yeah.
You know, if you know that the enemy is in that forest, you don't know how many of them there are, but then until later you didn't know that you don't know that they're actually Martians invading Earth. It's a complete unknown that you couldn't even... So sometimes nonsense things do make sense, and I tend to think that my mathematics, it did make sense, because if it weren't for those two games, when you look at our goal difference, you wouldn't blush.
Yeah.
But as it was, you know, we were kind of blushing and looking how bad it was. So I think me and Donald, we seem to talk nonsense, but actually it's not complete nonsense.
This is going to be a fun episode, isn't it?
I get this every week whenever James says, "Oh, but if we'd beaten Aston Villa, then we would have won the league. We would have done this.
3 more points.
But you
Done
didn't.
it.
That's the whole point. You didn't win the league.
Well, yeah, I know. But
No ifs and
it's still
buts.
true, though, isn't it? It's an if that happened.
Yeah, but that's where we keep talking about mathematics.
Yeah. So it's still right. It just takes you on a bit of a journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what life's about, isn't it? It's the journeys.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so today's topic then, we're going to get into, and it's a massive one, Tess. It's a big one, as we say.
Yeah, we're revisiting something, but we're also
It's something new as well.
and we're finalising it.
We have to really sort this out, because this is a debate that's been going on for generations. What is a real football fan?
Yeah,
Are you a true fan? Really? Well, we're going to find out today.
yeah. Who do you support?
Manchester United.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
We can't have another United fan on it. We've got Dan. That's our quota.
is
We
it?
don't need any more.
We had an Arsenal fan. You're an Arsenal fan, so
Yeah, but I'm a host. That doesn't count.
co-host.
Well, lead host, yeah.
I'm the host. You're the co-host.
Well, do you want to know how I became a Manchester United fan?
No. Yeah,
moving on.
How did you become a Man United fan?
Well, when I was 9 years old, the World Cup took place in 1966. And like almost every young boy in England, with Bobby Moore, Martin Peters and Geoff Hurst winning the World Cup for us, basically, I became a West Ham fan and loved West Ham. Until a year later, I was watching Match of the Day, and West Ham at Upton Park played Manchester United. Manchester United crushed them 6-1, and a young 18-year-old George Best absolutely
Oh, wow.
kind of made the scales fall from my eyes, and
Blew
I
me
just
away.
became a great George Best fan. So if George Best had been playing for Oxford United, I'd have been an Oxford United fan for life.
Yeah.
So basically, I think I don't think now people can appreciate how different George Best was, because every footballer was just a good craftsman then, like a good plumber or engineer. The idea of a football player being a star just didn't exist in this country.
Yeah.
And then he came along, and so I think like a lot of boys, I just completely fell in love with him, and therefore the sport he played and the team he played for.
Yeah, that's understandable, because a lot of people get into the sport because of an exciting player. I'm sure there's a lot of people that started loving football because of Messi or Ronaldo. They were stars, and they kind of became more than football.
Yeah, yes.
You fell in love with Arsenal because of Bergkamp, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. Because you call me a glory supporter, so we're going to get into
Well,
that.
yeah.
But it was really my cousin. So I was close to a family member, a cousin of mine, that was an Arsenal fan, and I didn't really know anything about teams, like who they were, how good they were, that kind of thing. But he used to wear his Arsenal shirts, and he was telling me about, oh, you've got to watch this player. So I started watching, because I used to play football with my dad, but I never watched it on TV.
Yeah.
But then you start watching people, and you start associating yourself with them. So I think accessibility is one thing as well, because you could see them on TV. Arsenal were one of the teams in the 90s that were on TV every now and again. So, and yeah, the way Bergkamp played, that was just, he could do things and just make other people look silly. It was just, and you think, wow. And it's a bit like what you were saying about George Best. You just kind of like, you fell in love with it. It was just amazing. So, and that's where it came from, really.
Mm.
And then Arsenal turned out to be quite a good side, but I've had a lot of stick over the years. Trust me,
Quite rightly.
I've had to, earn my stripes, really.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'd say I'm not a Glory supporter, but we'll get into that. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So, but how do you know if you're a true fan then? So, is it from a young age? Is it sort of, you have to have supported them by a young age? Or is it just, they're my favourite colour, or I'm from that area? Do you have to live in the area to be a real fan?
I think in terms of the actual glory seekers, they always start off with teams that are winning, aren't they? The champions.
Yeah.
And so you see these kids now with Man City tops, thinking that they've always been City fans, and they don't love City because of the trophies. No,
the
it's
history,
just the love of the football, honest.
Or the values of the club. That's the other thing. Is that I think you associate with the values of it. It's a tribal thing, isn't it? It's like a extended family in a sense. You sort of, I feel a sense of pride about Arsenal and how we behave. And if something happens which isn't good, it doesn't look good for the club, it kind of hurts at the same time. You kind of have that deep emotional connection with the club.
It'd be interesting to see if and when Man City are relegated to the second division, how many second-hand Man City shirts will end up in charity shops.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
That is interesting, because when we were at school, how many Man City shirts did we see? I don't remember.
No, I remember there was one kid. This was when we were in secondary school, so we were still teenagers, and there was a Chelsea fan who wasn't a Chelsea fan, I remember, until the Abramovich era. All of a sudden, the Chelsea kit came out.
Oh, you support Chelsea? Oh, yeah, that's legit. Yeah.
But now I've seen him on Facebook, and he's been wearing a City top. So I would say that is I think that's the biggest proof or evidence to say that that's a glory seeker.
Absolutely. Yes, that's definitely in that criteria. And this is a problem we have to fix, because as an Arsenal fan, I do get a lot of abuse from,
Again, quite rightly. Yeah.
Oh, maybe. But, from other teams, it's banter and you have a laugh and stuff. But I don't think you should have the right to do that if you're not a real fan. Because if you can just pick Man City or pick whichever team's winning at the time, you've got nothing to be criticised in sense. There's nothing for any opposition to challenge you on, kind of thing, because you're just winning everything.
Yeah, I can understand that. I do think geographically, if you are from the city, then you kind of get given a pass if you support the team. So, for example, if someone from Manchester, they start supporting Man City, I think it's a bit of a pass. You can't necessarily just call them a glory supporter because they're from Manchester.
Unless they were a Man United fan until...
Wow.
Yeah.
That has happened. There have been stories of that.
Oh, wow.
And someone I used to work with, actually, used to say... he supported Exeter, right? So he was from Exeter and supported Exeter.
The finest of teams.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, I respect that. That's brilliant. But what I don't respect is we had this bit of a debate at work once. We were very busy. And
you're a teacher, right?
It was at lunchtime or something. And he was saying, that's what true love is, isn't it? If you're from the team, you're not going to support a team. You don't love Arsenal like I love Exeter. And
so he thinks geographically he's got one over you.
Yeah, basically. I'll never understand the love that he has because I'm not from North London. I do have family from London, but do you have to be from? Do you have to have it in your blood? Do you? Is that so? All those fans across the world who support these teams, Arsenal, for example, United, Liverpool, Chinese fans, American fans, are they not real fans then?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I've got an issue with that.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that because that's we always laugh about the uniqueness of football. That is something that football is unique about, is that you don't have to be geographically located in the place that the team is. The majority of fans out there, football fans, are actually not geographically located in that country.
Yeah, especially for the top Premier League side, you think as
look
well.
at Man United. Man United fans in Manchester, I don't know how many tens of thousands there are, but there's tens of millions of United fans around the world.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The vast majority of football fans out there aren't actually from that place, but I don't think it means they're any less of a fan.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be. You can like football as much as you like, but if you claim to be a real fan and you want to give other people, grief for a rival team, then that's where I think, we're going to have to create an exam or something. So we've got a checklist at the end of this. I think I've got a few ideas to make a real fan. I'd be interested if you have anything you want to add to that list. But it is a real problem because there isn't an entrance exam, is there, for being a football fan?
Yeah.
I guess there are a few tests. If your team gets relegated and you stick with them, that is a very good good test.
That's actually in my criteria. So through whether you win, whether you lose, So at Arsenal, I'd be so hurt when Arsenal lose. It's a horrible feeling. We were away last weekend and Arsenal won, and I was still talking about it 2 days later. That's
it didn't ruin the weekend.
Yeah,
or anything.
to Cess and Coops' annoyance, I was like, I'm still buzzing from that win. It was a massive win, and it makes or breaks my weekend. I really am it affects your emotions, and that's what football can do. It's brilliant, but it's also, it's heavy.
Yeah, what football can do, what sports can do, I would say. There's, in other sports, it doesn't have to just be football.
Yeah.
I know that for you, it's unique.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
For others, it could be the second most unique.
No.
But
do you like other boring sports, Matt?
Oh, I like lots of boring sports.
Oh, right.
Football being one of them.
Football being
How dare you?
Of course, rugby. I am a Bath rugby season ticket holder, and and I grew up in Bath, so that certainly kind of fits that criterion.
Well, you were born in Germany, so technically you should support a German rugby team. Otherwise, you're not a true fan.
Yeah, but I think I was 3 months old when I left, so I think that gives me a pass out there.
I don't know.
But
we'll be the ones who decide that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot.
It was tick enough boxes, don't we?
Yeah, I'll let you know in a bit.
But I think the thing is with rugby, you don't see it very much on TV. One or two live games are shown, but you don't necessarily see that. Rugby doesn't work well with highlights. Match of the day is a great watch. You watch the rugby highlights, and you just see the tries. So it's really only for people who are already fans just catching up on things. It's not a fun thing. So everybody living out from away from the cities or out of the country, they're not really going to become followers and lovers of a team. To actually love a rugby team, you do need to go to the game. So
it's very rare to find a rugby fan who doesn't support the team that they grew up in, or from the city that they grew up in.
That's right. Right. So I think football is special in that way, in that it thanks to Rupert Murdoch, basically.
Yeah, Sky.
It is shown. Every game is shown all around the world.
Every year it's getting bigger, isn't it? The Premier League, is just.
I mean, it's nothing to do with this episode, but that is my one big bugbear about Match of the Day and everything. When they talk about, Alan Shearer being the top goal scorer in the Premier League.
Yeah. Football didn't exist before then.
I mean, Rod Laver is the only tennis player ever to win the Grand Slam twice. But that was, one of them was before it was a professional. But nobody would ever kind of not include him in the greats just because he was there before a certain date.
I suppose that's another unique thing about football, is that it's the only sport to really have reset itself somehow, just in this country. But
that's
they
true.
Just suddenly started going, right, from now everything counts.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter about what Dixie Dean did or Jimmy Greaves.
And just in case people don't know, Dixie Dean was a great Everton player. I think the only player ever to score 60 goals in a season.
63, I think it was.
63.
Like that. Yeah. There was a talk, wasn't there, when Haaland, in his first season, they said if he carries on going like this, he could break Dixie Dean's record, but he would have to score like 2 a game without any injuries or nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well. It is a shame in a way, because we've grown up without much of that sort of promoted a lot. They only really refer to before the Prem. With stats, don't they? Oh, this is the worst start to a league season since 1970. So they'll throw a stat out there, but that's only when they want to pick and choose or make a point. They don't actually listen to the history or respect the players in a sense, do they? It's a bit of a shame.
It is. I mean, the only reason that people know Bobby Moore and Bobby Charlton is because they did just happen to win the World Cup.
Yeah.
If not for that, they'd be written out of history.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, and it is very true about the whole highlights with football. As John said last week. Football is so boring. There's only a few interesting bits in this. I mean, his words, not mine.
That doesn't make them true, We all know John is a muppet.
But the thing is, because of that, a lot of the highlights, the majority of the highlights, are actually misses. It's not the goals. If they just show the goals, you might only get one goal a game.
Minutes.
Yeah, so
the whole show.
The majority of it is actually the misses and the close calls. Occasionally maybe a yellow or a red card or something. Whereas in rugby, you can show the highlights can just be tries or conversions or penalties because there's more of them.
And in fact, usually on the highlights, they don't even show all of the penalties and the conversions because there isn't time. A try often takes quite a bit of time and it's very technical. So, and there are quite a few of them. So basically, you do just see the tries, and which is good rugby, but it's not good viewing. It doesn't create a mini game.
Yeah.
Whereas a good editor can take a football game, cut it down from 90 minutes to 10 minutes, and still make it a coherent
Give
game.
a good impression of what happened. But
Match of the Day's done it well. Do you remember when ITV took
the Premiership.
highlight?
Yeah.
And they decided to give the score before the highlights. So
they did, didn't they?
You managed to avoid all of the, look away now things, and then suddenly you go to watch it and they say, "Oh, it's a great game, 2-0. Let's watch the highlights."
That's a good point. I do agree with you there, though, Matt. Rugby highlights are boring.
Yeah.
How many of those have you watched?
But I do.
My dad's a huge rugby fan, actually, to bring my dad into this. So growing up, it'd be rugby, cricket, tennis. He loves football, was his favourite, but it'd all be. I'd have to leave the living room because after a while, I was like, this is very boring.
He's a lot more cultured than you. That's the thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I do think boring rugby games can be boring. Football games can be. Everything can be boring.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And the thing is, a boring rugby game live is much more interesting than a boring football game.
That's very true, actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It because it's so technical that even if it's dull, it is still interesting dull.
And also,
Well-
you have actual straight lines of play. So you don't have players all over the pitch like in football. You've got two lines, and occasionally you might have a fullback or something sat back. But you've got two lines of play, and then they all crash into each other. And so you've got 15 aside, and then pretty much at least 20 of them are crashing into each other. Whereas in football, you have one player with the ball, then they might have one guy coming in to pressure him or something, but then all the other players are just scattered amongst the...
And in rugby, you cannot park the bus. You can't kill a game off.
Yeah.
If you try that, you hang
him
back and you
territory.
do that. People will just kind of drop goals or win penalties and be 3 points. So you have to actually engage in the game. But when you try to edit it down like Match of the Day, it just loses all of its interest.
Football is a beautiful game, isn't it?
So football is a beautiful game.
Speaking about
It's so much more, a little bit more unique than other sports.
yeah, absolutely. Speaking about boring matches and things, what was it that got you supporting Everton?
Wow, what a segue. Well, to be honest, there wasn't one specific thing. So I remember my sister supported Leeds, and there was a team that beat Leeds 2-0, and I kind of jumped on, "Wait, that's my team," as a joke. But they also wore blue, and at the time I quite liked the colour blue. And then the first person that I remember in football wasn't a player, it was David Moyes. I really liked David Moyes. And I've always been kind of a supporter of an underdog. And Everton were kind of seen as the almost sleeping giant. I think they averaged 12th place or something in the Premier League until Moyes came in. And so they were bottom half team, but they were still a big team. And
Great
then
history.
Yeah. Moyes came in and he embedded a great structure, and I just kind of liked the fact that they were a low team, but then a lot of the top four kind of feared them. They didn't want to play at Goodison Park.
Always a tough
They
match.
almost broke into the top four, didn't they?
They did once.
They did one
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
They got into the Champions League.
But wasn't there for some reason they couldn't actually get into the Champions League?
Well, it was after Liverpool had won the Champions League, but they were finished outside of the top four. So there was this idea, does that mean Everton lose a spot for Liverpool to play?
That was it, yeah.
But luckily they said, no, Everton can play, but we got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah,
So-
it was a squad really. You weren't, and also the experience. I think having that European, it's often harder for teams. It'd be interesting to see how Villa get on actually. Which actually, we had the draw, haven't we, for the Champions League? It's all changing this year, so that'll be an interesting topic we can talk about in a future lesson. Actually, there is one thing you said about Everton. If Everton start winning, so I don't know if you were joking about this. If Everton start winning something,
I'll have you know, we beat a League Two Doncaster team 4-0.
they have to get a round of applause there. So you said if Everton start winning, you might have to find another team.
Oh,
Is that-
as in winning trophies?
Yeah.
That was done as a joke. I don't think I will because I can't see myself supporting another team. You know, like if I say to you, can you start supporting another team? Just pick another team and start supporting them. It'll feel weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It'll kind of be like a writing with your left hand almost. So I can't see myself supporting another team. The only reason why I joke about that is because Everton aren't going to start winning loads of trophies, so I can say that kind of thing.
Yeah, you did say I quite like being the underdog.
Yeah.
But I actually looked up what the opposite to a glory supporter is. But
Unglory supporter.
it doesn't exist. So instead, I had to look up the opposite to the word glory. So I put that in front instead.
Okay.
So you would actually be, if you stopped supporting Everton because they started winning, you would actually be a lowliness fan.
Right.
Or maybe just a masochist.
Probably, yeah.
Or a modesty fan. That's what it's called.
So I'm modest. I'm like Trump. I'm one of the most modest people in the world.
So yeah, you'd be opposite to a glory supporter. You'd be a modesty supporter or a lowliness supporter.
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't want Everton to win and I don't want England to win or anything. It's just if there's a big team playing against a small team in the Champions League final, I'd always kind of support the smaller team.
David and Goliath kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when
I get
Dortmund
that.
played against Bayern in the final, I supported Dortmund.
I do that so if my team's not playing, I often support the lower team, the smaller team, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
But it's good for you because you're a glory seeker, so you've got an Arsenal team.
right.
Yeah.
So with what you were saying a minute ago then, can you support more than one team? So some people you talk to, including actually myself, I don't talk to myself, but in terms of, so you might have more than one team, maybe your local team, and then in my case, Arsenal on top of that. It's my local team, say Bristol City, you might have Bristol Rovers, Bath, for example, any of those. I'd like to see them all doing well. Is that possible to be a fan of those teams then, or is that...
I don't think you necessarily call yourself a fan though, would you? Because I know you had a season ticket for Bristol City. Was it City?
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 years, yeah.
But can you... So a fan is a shortened term for fanatic. And I don't think you can call yourself a fan of something if you just kind of want them to do well.
Yeah.
You know, and I wouldn't call myself a fan of Bath City or Bristol City or Rovers, but I would want them to do well.
And I think I agree with you. And I think the real test for that would be if the two teams play each other, what would you want the result to be? And at all costs, it would be Arsenal to win, even if it was for Bristol City to get promoted. Sorry, City fans. I want City to do well. I'd love to see them promoted. But if it's for Arsenal's sake, they're my team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, in the international stage, I support Japan and England. And we've often said before, you always ask me, like, what if they're both in the final? Which, firstly, Japan men's team are never going to get to the final. So I don't have to worry about that. But
But the women's, it could happen.
the women's that's very true. It could happen. I usually support Japan because I see them as underdogs. Even though, actually, Japan women's team won the World Cup once. But, I kind of see them as underdogs. So I would probably support Japan. But I could call myself a fan of both.
Yeah, or a supporter. But going back to what you were saying there, would you actually be a fanatic for both then? Or
I would say so.
do we want to separate the words supporter and fanatic?
Don't you think it's a bit different with international? With a club, I've tried since Ferguson retired. My favourite player, United player, Paul Scholes, retired the same day. And the United team, basically the bottom fell out of the team. They've never recovered. They've played pretty much dismal football each time.
Yeah.
And I've tried very much to change, to support Brighton or to support whichever team coming up that looks kind of like a real likely underdog. And I've tried, but although I like them, like it or not, still when I look at the results, I kind of see how is Man United done.
Yeah.
Even when I don't like them anymore, so I don't support them anymore. But I'm a reluctant fan.
Reluctant fan. We're gonna have to
Yeah,
write
right.
that down. I think we all have soft spots for other teams, though, don't we? So, like Brighton, I'm a big fan of because of their model that they have there as a club, the way they play football.
Yeah.
That kind of. I think that's important as well. The style of play for me. That's something which just one of my values in football is. I think you should want to play attractive, attacking football, that kind of thing, if possible.
And if it's a well-run team, like in that recent report, Tottenham, they said, was the best run team in the country, and I'm sure you like them for that reason, don't you?
Absolutely. So, moving on.
You gave them credit for that as well, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
You
I
agreed
mentioned
they're
it
the
before.
best North London team, and
I gave them credit for playing, because they do play good football, Tottenham. It's normally losing football, but it's good football.
Well, it'd be awful for them to be relegated because you wouldn't be able to have that the joy of beating them, would
It
you?
would. I don't want them relegated. Yeah, that's very true.
that's when we fixed rivalry.
Yeah, we fixed that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Rivalry and hatred, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is another issue, though. One more thing I want to get onto before we get onto the proper fixes and, what is a real fan. That is, these like touts that companies or, people who can just get hold of tickets, they get tickets instead of real fans. That's another kind of associated issue. It's in football. It's around music and stuff as well.
Yeah.
They're talking about gigs and stuff where not the player, music.
I was going to say there's only one gig.
Music gigs where these touts are able to get hold of them and then sell them at ridiculous prices is a real issue. So this is another reason why we need to actually get a definition for we're going to save the world here.
That is true, but I reckon you can still be a fanatical without ever going to a game.
Yeah,
Say,
absolutely.
for example,
Yeah.
Someone in Asia supporting
Absolutely.
United or Arsenal or whatever. So I don't necessarily think that... I've heard that there was someone that I worked with that said that you have to at least have seen them once, if not multiple times, in order to be a fan. And he said that I wasn't really a fan because I've only seen Everton once in my whole career. In my whole life. But,
in your whole career
as a podcaster. James.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. Like you say, logistically, people do fly all over the world to go and watch their teams, and I would, but it depends on your lifestyle, the money available, that kind of thing. So I completely agree. That should not be in the criteria to be a real fan. You have to watch them.
Yeah.
But this is where... So actually, I want to go and watch Arsenal. Obviously, we've gone. We had that great game, didn't we? Watched Everton. Was it 5-0 in the end?
5-1.
5-1, was it? Sorry.
What was that?
Everton Arsenal. It was the last game of the season, and we met the Arsenal
players. We went to the hotel. Yeah,
Oh,
we accidentally parked in the hotel. And
we just parked in any car park we could see. We just went, let's go in that one, and we happened to come out of the car park at the same time as the Arsenal players were coming out of the hotel of that car park.
Getting onto the coach, so we were walking up going, oh, hang on, that chap looks like Saka over there.
Yeah, he's kind of like Mikel Arteta.
We got a few selfies and things, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was great. And I've been down to Arsenal quite a few times, but this was when Arsenal, a few years ago, we were 8th a couple of times. We finished 8th in the league. We finished 5th, I think, that season that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Since Arsenal have now started to challenge for the title, it's so difficult to get tickets. And why is that happening? Why is that? That shouldn't happen. It should be, if you're a real fan and you've been loyal, you want to go as much as you can, you should still be able to do that. But there's a whole number of reasons why. But one key one is that these sort of ticket touts, if you like, these people that are just buying or getting hold of tickets and then selling them for ridiculous prices.
Yeah, I think you can count. You can actually probably count quite accurately the number of true fans a team has by counting the season tickets, because those touts can't necessarily buy the season tickets.
True. Yeah.
And a true fan, say for example, when Derby got 11 points that season,
12 wasn't it?
12 points was it? Oh wow!
Don't you miss that?
Sorry,
point,
Derby. But a lot of the season ticket holders still went week in, week out.
Fair play.
Those are true fans, but like you say with Arsenal tickets, it's not because suddenly more season tickets are being bought. It's because the general sale tickets, they're the ones that are going because people all of a sudden want to jump on the bandwagon.
There are various levels, especially to the Premier League sides and stuff, of levels of membership. So you know, but I go as high as I can afford. But then sometimes, so I was a member last year, but wasn't able to get any tickets the whole time. So it is frustrating.
It's a lottery, is it?
They've now started this ballot system, but there are ways to manipulate that as well. So hopefully that will change, and I can get back down. I want to go down at least a few times a season if I can. But it is a real issue, I think. So we need to sort this out. One thing I did have to do. So my first ever visit to Arsenal was back when we were playing at Highbury, and I had to go through one of those ticket tout websites. It was 400 and something. I was at school at the time. I was in sixth form, so I was still a student.
Yeah.
My dad paid for half of his ticket. He came down just to support, help me go to London for one of the first times. So, I bought my own ticket for a couple £100, and I bought half of my dad's ticket because he's a Chelsea fan. So he just came down to support me. Yeah. It did turn out to be one of the best days of my life. I saw Bergkamp score his last ever goal. So in my mind, it was justified. It was worth it. Yeah. But when you think about it, that's crazy for someone who wants to go and support something that they love. It's like telling a Christian that they can't go to church unless they pay that much money, or like say a Jew who can't go to a
synagogue. Yeah.
How do you say it? Synagogue. A Jew that can't go to a synagogue.
And you wonder why.
This is why he does it. Synagogue.
Yes.
Yeah.
A Jew that cannot go to a synagogue. So it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? So
it is.
That's
and
what
it's
it
the same
like.
tribal thing. I would say that I wouldn't necessarily say football is like religion, but it's similar in terms of the tribalism.
Yes.
And it's a tribe. You protect your tribe. So you can have a go at Arsenal, but then if someone outside of Arsenal has a go at Arsenal, you feel a bit defensive.
Yeah,
don't
you want to defend them. Yeah. Shall we go on to the fixes, Sess?
Let's do it.
Right, so what makes a real fan? Well, here's my list.
Yeah.
A couple of things you kind of referred to there, Matt. So one of them being that you support your team, or if it's a performer of some kind, but if in case of football, you support your team whether they win, whether they lose, and you're still proud to wear that shirt. So there's times when Arsenal have lost, but I'd be playing football that evening and I'd still wear the Arsenal shirt out to it, sort of thing. And I sort of, I'll be prepared for a bit of grief I might get from other people, but, I'm proud to wear that shirt. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would.
Yeah.
It makes sense because if someone jumps ship then that's the perfect definition of someone who isn't fanatical for that team.
If you're not able to wear that shirt when in not just the good times, Arsenal, we are lucky that we've been in the Premier League for all of, forever, since the Premier League's been around. So obviously we know history didn't exist before then.
Yeah.
So, I'm lucky in that sense, and I'm also that we're often in the top sort of quarter of the table, that kind of thing. But there have been some dire years still.
So you're saying the fix is that every team at some point should be relegated so you can get rid of all of the non-fans?
Yeah, what did you call them, Matt? The fans who aren't real fans.
I wasn't listening to myself.
The copy. It's like having coops on. It's like the copycat fans or something you called them, or something like that.
Yeah.
I have to figure what that
What
was.
was yours? Unglory supporter or something? I can't remember what it was.
That's for people who you actually support a team if you're
yeah.
not winning. So that's the opposite.
So basically, I mean, what you're saying, it's like a marriage. When you get married, you have to swear to be together in sickness and in health.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, in sickness and in health.
Exactly that. So I wonder if we should do a study. If there's a
You
relation
have to marry your team.
I was going to say people who are not loyal to their team. What does that mean about their marriage?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh no. Another thing I was going to say is that passion. Now, however you show your passion, you are passionate. So you should promote your team. That's allowed. I know some people are tart and go, "Oh, why did you keep going on about?" You do that because I go on about Arsenal largely. But,
I mean, you go on about it obsessively.
Yes, I know.
Very frustrating to have a conversation with you, knowing it's at some point going to go to Arsenal.
So I appreciate the degrees of annoyingness, but in terms of if you're a tick box to say, well, that qualifies, that's clearly putting you within that. You're a definite fan kind of thing. It's not about the glory. It's not about, that's clearly you're a true fan.
Well, as a Man United fan, I've only ever once been to Man United, and this was back, I think it was 1969, so I was 12 or 13 years old and went with my mother.
So you wouldn't have even seen them wearing red. Still would have been black and white then.
No, they were red.
Oh, okay.
They were red. That's going back to the 1930s, I think.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, I thought that was a joke before colour TV.
That was a joke.
That was a joke, okay.
I thought it was a good joke, but I'll have to go.
It would have been if I'd got it. But the thing that struck me, Manchester back then was a lot grimmer than it is now. All the surrounding area, with my mother, as we drove towards Old Trafford, and it was really there were probably still a lot of places bombed out from the war which hadn't been rebuilt.
Yeah.
And it really struck me, one of the big differences between rugby and football is that traditionally most of the great footballing places, Liverpool, Sheffield, Manchester, whatever, traditionally back in the 1920s and 30s, they were pretty grim places to live. Whereas if you live in Bath supporting a rugby team, it's a lovely town. There's lots of things to enjoy, and rugby is one of them. Whereas you lived in a grim place up north, not now so much, but back then, that really was the one time a week where you could go into the theatre of dreams.
Yeah.
And you really do care passionately about this because it's the only thing in your life that you really can
You
care
can
about.
you can escape the world.
Yeah.
And you
This,
get that kind of light.
This podcast would like to disassociate itself from Matt's views of the North.
I did say that I'm talking historically back in the 1920s and 30s, and I think, but this created a tradition where I think that passion, even though living in Manchester or Birmingham now it's nothing like it was back then, that tradition of that deep kind of connection with the team doesn't dissipate.
Interesting. And if you work for the tourist board of Bath, do get in touch. We'll get Matt on.
Lovely,
again.
lots of things to do actually.
It's a lovely town. No, it's interesting actually, because football also. I think it's that it's something special for people to escape from their situation. Sometimes, quite as you mentioned, there maybe not pleasant situations at times, and football can just make you forget.
That's right.
So that's why we love it.
But that's the same in most sports. Boxing was very much an escape for young black people, especially early on, to try and escape from the situations they were in.
Yeah.
You can say sports like tennis, for example, that kind of started in a middle class, upper class place, and it stayed that way. Kind of similar with rugby, but I think a lot of sports were actual ways and means to escape.
Yeah.
But
situation.
But do people don't become fans in the same way to individuals, do they?
Not to individuals, not as much, no.
Because, when you support a team, I mean, you might like Bergkamp and I like George Best. They only stay with them for a few years and they leave. You become supporters of the shirt, basically.
That's why Saudi Arabia's league didn't really progress, because there was this fear that they're going to take all the best players, but you're not going to stop being an Arsenal fan just because they took some Arsenal players, maybe.
Exactly.
But I agree with that, because I think for individual sports like tennis or boxing, a lot of people seem to think that the person that you support is the one that you think is the best. So I'm a supporter of Anthony Joshua in boxing, but people keep saying, I keep getting it all the time, why do you support him? Like, he's not the best. I know he's not the best. I openly say he's not the best, but why do I have to support the one that I think is the best? That doesn't make sense, because then that's kind of going into the glory-seeking definition as well. Exactly. What's the point in watching anyone else fight if you're not going to watch the world champion fighting every time? So I do think that's very different to support a team compared to an individual.
I find myself having to explain you as well when people say, "What? So your co-host, your assistant
leader,
supports Everton. Why does he support Everton?" And I was like, "What's wrong with that?" I don't understand why I have to explain. Yeah. You support a team for various reasons. Yeah. You could have lived there. You might not have. It might be the colour blue. It might not be. You associate with it. You start as you build a relationship with it, don't you?
And you start. I think you also set your standard to that team. So I love Tim Cahill, for example, but I'm not saying Tim Cahill should have played for United back then or anything. But I set my standard to Everton's level. And at Everton's level, he was brilliant. He was one of the best headers in the Premier League, even though he was tiny.
Yeah. So what I also want to add to this, I think it ties to one of our previous episodes, is you also support the players no matter what they do. So if a player in your team actually does something a bit silly, well, I say no matter, within... Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, because like Suarez, for example... No, this would be a good bit to talk about, actually. Suarez, for example, when he was caught doing racism towards Patrice Evra, and Liverpool backed Suarez. They were wearing those T-shirts, weren't they?
Oh, yeah,
backing
that's
him.
true.
But then Carragher was on Monday Night Football, I think, with Evra a few years ago, and he apologised. He said they got it massively wrong.
Yeah.
So I think supporting no matter what takes it a bit too far, doesn't it? Because you've got to, if someone does do something wrong, you've got to think. Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, if we're talking about things that clash with our kind of values and what we believe is, if it's discriminatory or anything like that, absolutely not. Yeah. But sometimes if they make a mistake on social media or they're out partying or something like that, we still support that player. Sometimes they might need it. A lot of football players as well, very young. These are young lads, really. And ladies as well in the women's game. But especially if you think the money that the men are paid and they're out, clubbing and buying sports cars, and they're going to do silly things. We did silly things when we were younger. It's going to
with
happen.
Our millions.
Well, with our millions of pounds, yeah. So, people are going to make mistakes, but you need to support players through it. It's, I suppose, like a marriage. There's going to be moments when you have fallouts. There's going to be moments when you need to make up again. And it will be a bit like that. It's not always your team's the best and does only the best things.
And I imagine, as you say, like a marriage, if one partner does something dreadful, the other partner supports them most of the time. But occasionally, there is such a thing as divorce. If Man City were found guilty of all of these financial charges, some fair weather fans might desert them because they're not winning, but also some fans with a sense of morals might think, God, I've been supporting this team, but actually they've achieved all of this through devious means. I don't think I can support them anymore.
That's a really interesting point, actually.
So I think there's lots of grey areas where each person has to test their own fanaticism.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when we're looking at this topic, it was a bit of a jokey topic in a sense of, you'll be a real fan if you do these things. But in all honesty, you're a real fan if you believe you are, I suppose. This sounds beautiful, this, doesn't it? But
for once, you said something all right.
But that actually that's true, isn't it? If you believe you're... Like, when you were saying I was a Glory supporter, I hope you were joking, because I actually was a bit hurt by it. I was like, I can't tell, Sas, but this really hurts. It says that. So Arsenal mean so much to me, and to be said, you support them because they win sort of thing. I'm sure you were joking.
You also know that if you show weakness, I'll play on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, I just got to hold this together now. But it does hurt. Whereas, some people, if they're not a real fan, just leave them alone. They'll, I'm sure they'll blow away to another team at some point anyway, if that's the case.
Yeah, that's very true, actually.
So do you have any other sort of criteria you want to add into that? We've got passionate, supports whether you win or lose, whether you're relegated or you win the league. You've got supports players if they do something silly, I'll say. If it's something which is actually, discriminatory or something silly like that.
I would actually, I'd kind of dispute that a little bit. I would say support the team if players do something silly. So whatever players might do, I would say you should back the team and the club. And whatever their decision is, you back the club's decision. So Aubameyang, for example, I can't remember what it was that he was doing. Was he turning up late or something? Like
sort of training and
it's like his behaviour basically, wasn't it? And so backing Aubameyang, I think, is not necessarily the right thing to do. I think backing Arsenal's decision to get rid of him, I think, is the thing to support.
Absolutely.
I would say it's but either way. Backing,
I think the player needs support. Maybe might need guidance. So as a teacher, I'm thinking of a player that might need a bit of extra education or might need training on something. Time management, for example, is something that I deal with a lot in education with my students and things. So, don't just leave the player out to dry. I know they call it professional football, but it's a lot of responsibility on sometimes very young players.
A good marriage is a marriage that lasts, and the way that those people met is going to be completely various, and there's going to be so many different ways. And, one man might have just seen a pretty woman in the pub, which is not a good basis for a lifelong marriage. But if that was the first thing that attracted him to her, and then he went to speak to her and then they found they get on, then something which is just surface and certainly is not the basis of a great relationship could still be the entry point.
Absolutely. Or if they could meet at a football match, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one final thing is your team does not have to be the best. I'm going to put that in there as well.
That is true.
Absolutely.
So I think we've solved that one then. Just before we go, though, I want to bring in a bit of fantasy football knowledge. I think we need some tips, don't we, Sess?
Yeah, but can't really find any good ones, so we've got John instead, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We have John's Juicy Tips.
Juicy. I can smell your tips, John.
John's Juicy Tips.
Yeah.
Alright, get your cups ready because it's time to pour out some more juicy tips. There is no Premier League to watch this week, but that gives us more time to change our FPL teams. And I would advise that if you've not got Haaland or Salah in your team, or had a bad start to the season, then this is the time to wildcard. So here's my wildcard top 3 players. At number 3 in defence is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Not only is he still great going forwards, but Liverpool looks solid at the back as well. He's going to outscore all the other defenders clearly this season, so he's got to be in your team. At number 2 is Cole Palmer. He really looks like Chelsea's focal point this season, having been involved in all of their goals so far, and is 2 million cheaper than Mohamed Salah, which should allow you to invest in the rest of your team. And at number 1, no surprises, it's Erling Haaland. Unbelievable, 7 goals in 3 games. Juicy.
Thanks for that, John. Brilliant tips there. Oh, and congratulations to the leader of our Fantasy Football League after match week 3, the Popular Front of Judea.
People's Front of Judea.
I thought it was Popular Front.
No, People's Front.
Who's the Popular Front?
He's over there.
Splitters! So, there we are then. We've solved another one. So, saved the day again.
Save the day again. Yeah, we have indeed.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. Have you enjoyed it?
I've enjoyed it very much, yes. Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Please do like and subscribe. Everything from our socials to from our YouTube to our Spotify. It really makes a massive difference to us. Thanks for listening, guys. Do share, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And me.